So welcome to the third Wandsworth Coronavirus Business Forum, Have Your Say for Businesses. Last week we got some fantastic, I think 40 minutes of recording with some really good information, and the feedback from businesses in Wandsworth are that they really do appreciate these events. So for today's meeting, we'll be focusing on landlord and rents. And Andrew Cordrey from Lawerence will be talking to us on that. And then we'll have Oreste Mapses from Business Doctors, who will be talking us through what businesses can do to improve their cash flow in these crisis times. And Zaib Chawala from Lanop will also be contributing in that session. So without much ado, I'd like to hand over now to Jonathan Cook, the Cabinet Member for Business at Wandsworth Council, for an introduction.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Lovely.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Steve. Good morning, everyone. Another beautiful morning. Hope everyone had a bit of a break over the Easter weekend. Could I maybe start by just a quick update on what the Council's doing? I mean, it's a very dynamic situation, changes hour by hour, day by day, and then move on to the business side of things. Our community hub is now fully up and running, takes about 300 calls a day, and that's really the focal point for anyone who needs help to get in touch with the council. And we're very focused on helping vulnerable residents and anyone in real need. That's the purpose of that hub. One of the things it does as well is it's the contact point for all of those residents who are shielding either by reason of serious illness or age. There are several thousand in the borough, so it's quite a task. And we are either taking calls from people who are on that list because they've been notified by the NHS, or we're proactively contacting them ourselves to make sure they're okay. And that triggers all sorts of other actions like food deliveries if necessary. There's been a lot of work going on to get rough sleepers off the streets, and we've managed to accommodate an awful lot in hotels. So that's gone well. That work is ongoing. So huge effort is going on, and we're now also moving into a bit of a phase of hospital discharge, where residents leaving hospital and coming back into the community have got very particular needs, so supporting them as well. So the council has really reoriented itself to make sure that all of those needs are met. Moving on to the business side of life, we're acutely conscious of the other pain and difficulty that so many businesses are going through. It's a very, very difficult time. We're very clear that we need to do everything we possibly can to help. We're particularly focused on self-employed. We think there is a bit of an issue in that the furlough scheme is obviously terrific, but there's a disparity between those who are eligible for that. Contrast that with self-employed people who don't generally seem to be able to access the same level of support. We've just launched a scheme, we launched it just before the Easter weekend, to support anyone who hasn't got the 18-19 tax return in, to support people to get that in quickly. We've extended the deadline for that until Sunday. Been a very good take up in the last few days, so we're pleased by that. So that will hopefully help anyone who is able to submit their tax return in time. That will trigger self-employed support. So that work's going on, and we're, as I alluded to there, very, very anxious on behalf of the self-employed community. We've probably got the largest cohort of self-employed of any London borough. We reckon it's about 35,000. More generally, the support through the business rate system and the grants, that's going very well. Mr. Russell may well have the absolute latest figures, but certainly by mid-afternoon yesterday, we were over 70% of eligible businesses had received grants, and we dispersed just over £26 million, so well ahead of the average for UK local authorities, and we'll keep pushing on that. And we're now focused on making sure that any business which is eligible gets in touch with us so it can get those funds, because we realise how critical cash flow, which we'll come on to later in the meeting, is to keep the show on the road for so many businesses. So so maybe if I leave it there for now, I'll be very interested to get a sense of what the immediate concerns here and now are. These calls are tremendously useful. I'd like to thank you, Steve, for arranging. It's a very valuable thing. So thanks very much for now.
It's good to know that you keep pushing for the self-employed and the sole traders. We're still taking a lot of calls, and this is certainly an area for concern. Now I'd like to pass on to Graham Russell, who's the Assistant Director of Resources at Wandsworth Council. And Graham's going to give us some more updates on the actual implementation of the Wandsworth Council response to this pandemic.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody. Just a brief update on the various strands of help that we're giving. First one is around the extended retail relief scheme, whereby businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors will not pay any business rates in 2021. We expect to issue the revised bills by the end of this week. We've had a little bit of a delay with our software company updating the system, but those bills should be out to everybody who's due a change by the end of the week. On the grants, as Councillor Cook said, we've had 3,097 claims put into the council so far, which we believe is about 3/4 of the total number of eligible businesses in the borough, which is great. We've processed 1,740 of those, again, as Councillor Cook said, for 26 million, and we're working as hard as we can to push the rest through as quickly as possible. The one thing I have been asked to mention by the business rates team, which is essentially one person, because it's an outsourced service, and we've got a couple of people helping him, is just to say that whilst we understand businesses are anxious to receive their money and they want to know where things are, every time we have to answer one of those queries, it slows everything down. So I'm not saying don't, but honestly, if you could only do that under the most extreme of circumstances, that would help us to speed things along. That's it from me, Steve.
Yeah, it's great to know that 3/4 of businesses that are eligible have made claims and you're processing them. But I guess there are quite a few businesses that aren't eligible, and we need to find a way to help them. So thank you for that. I'm now going to pass over to Andrew Cordrey. Andrew's going to give us some tips and hints on how we can perhaps work with landlords and negotiate rents. Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Obviously, landlords, rents, and the relationship between a landlord and tenant at the moment is potentially being tested like never before. We are a local firm of commercial estate agents. We've spoken to a lot of tenants and landlords. I myself have a business which is a tenant, and I'm also a landlord. So I've got a reasonable good feel for what's happening out there. I think it's important to note that, you know, we all have, if we've signed a lease or a license, we are contractually obliged to pay a landlord a rent. That's what we signed up to do. And I think we mustn't potentially lose sight of that as a business. It is a cost, and for a lot of businesses, it's probably one of the largest costs after wages. That said, I'll use the cliche that we are in unprecedented times, and I think it's like any business again, communication is vital, and communication at a very, very early stage, I think, is also vital. And I will explain a couple of things and give some scenarios. Most landlords do have debt on their buildings. Some won't, some might be old family trusts who've inherited it. If you have debt on your building as a landlord, you will have banking covenants and you will have loan to value ratios. So a landlord will have issued probably the March demand. A lot of businesses pay monthly, a lot of businesses pay quarterly. So they are expecting the rent, which they then pass to the bank in the normal course of events. So there are, I think, some fundamentals that need to be thought about. There are landlords who are being more receptive than others. but there are also, unfortunately, a number of tenants who seem to have taken this opportunity to get a renegotiation, not paying rent, and that's in the press. That's not been helpful. So I think, putting the basics aside, the first thing is you need to contact your landlord at the earliest opportunity, which I'm sure we've all done. For a lot of businesses, I think perhaps the March monthly rent or the March quarter's rent is payable because the lockdown didn't happen until quite late, and a lot of businesses should have been able to pay that money. I think if you haven't paid that, and you could have, not saying that it could potentially be a mistake, because it puts the landlords in a position whereby they feel that they are having people profiteer against them. I have 2 tenants, both in the leisure industry. I speak to them every quarter to see how they're going. I spoke to them before the quarter of this time, and they both said it was fine. One came to me and said, I'll pay March, I need to talk about June. The other on the quarter day said, I'm not paying. As a landlord, I think it's difficult because we know they have the money, and I think you've got to be careful not to profiteer. So I think, as I said, early communication is vital. Most landlords will go to their banks and look to do some form of holiday, whether it be capital repayment, interest repayment, or just the interest. So they will look to get a holiday from their banks. It is a holiday. I mean, I am doing it with 2 banks myself, one of whom has agreed. Now, I would say that whilst they have verbally agreed, we still haven't had the terms of that deferment. So I'm still having to pay until that comes out. And I think it's probably something that a lot of people are affected, is the speed of which this may or may not be happening. But I think it's such a big issue, you're going to have to be patient. So we are looking to defer probably 3 months of our capital and interest, but we will be paying it back. We're not getting it for free. As a business on the landlord side, we have offered our tenants a 3-month rent-free period over the next 6 months, either by way of half rent for the next 6 months, or if they've paid the March quarter, we will look to let them off the June quarter. Now, we are, as a business, taking the view that we will actually let them off that quarter's rent. We will not look for them to repay it, because, to be perfectly honest with you, we want them to survive, and we want them to do well, and we want them to be able to pay in September. That's not the norm, perhaps, from a lot of landlords, but it's just the view we've taken in the longevity of our landlord business. A lot of landlords may give you a rent-free or quarter's rent or a couple of months' rent, but they will want it paid back. Again, they are entitled to do that. So the options are, in my opinion, both as a tenant and a landlord, try and pay something. Try and pay part of your rent if you can, because it will keep the landlord knowing that you are doing your best in difficult times. Then, if you can't, you need to be transparent with your landlord, and you need to be honest and open. If he asks you for bank statements, he's asking you for a reason. It's because he needs to prove to himself or herself or themselves that you really are in hardship. Because I do know of a lot of tenants who've taken this opportunity just not to pay when they can. And that's affecting those who can't, because landlords finding that quite, not objectionable, but difficult. So transparency. If they ask for your statements, my personal advice is, if you can't pay, you have nothing to hide, let them have it. If there's information on the statement you don't want them to see, you can blank it out, but you need to be showing your landlord that if you're asking for help, it's for a genuine reason. Most landlords we've come across will help in some way if they can. I know the government have put out that you can't be evicted for 3 months, which is good for a tenant. Again, I think some tenants are spoiling it for others, in that everyone seems to think, oh, that's great, there's nothing I can do, they can do, I don't pay my rent, I won't be kicked out. That's having a knock-on effect where I think landlords are getting not happy with that. So some of them will issue statutory demands because they feel that the tenant can pay but just isn't paying. So I think there are no rules in this, unfortunately. It's common sense between the tenant and the landlord. Landlords are not banks. They do have, they have to pay their capital and their interest, And like any business, they expect an income. So, as I said, whilst there isn't any formal rules in this, early communication, transparency, and in my humble opinion, try and offer the landlord something should get you at least a dialogue that can be sensible and something you can work for the future. Most landlords do not want to lose their tenants. You know, no one really knows what's going to happen in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months. My personal view is I think it's going to be a tough year. Most businesses have had it tough with Brexit. This is going to be tougher. So people still want a business premises. Landlords want tenants. Be honest, be open, and be transparent. And you should get some difficulties. If you're not, I'm happy to take questions after this or talk to your landlords for you. We're not going to charge. It's not what we do, but we can sometimes understand both sides. And as I said, as a tenant and a landlord, I do get both sides of the story.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That's really useful. So I get the messages that these are contracts and they are binding, but these are exceptional times. Communication is absolutely clear. And I guess, you know, landlords do want businesses to survive. So there is that at the end of it. So I'm now going to hand over to Oreste Mapses, who's going to take you through critical cash flow actions that businesses can take. Oreste, over to you.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. Just for anybody who doesn't know me, my name again is Oreste Mapses. What I normally do, I help business owners to improve or grow their business. But as you can imagine, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it has been more about helping them to stabilize and to set up the conditions with the cash flow people and sales to survive this really challenging period. So just to put it into context, the key 3 critical issues really is to navigate into what we need to do in these 3 areas: cash, sales, and people. And today we're going to focus on cash. But what I want to emphasize is that it is, yes, important that we are focusing on first thing come first, doing the thing that can help to stabilize our business. But also, we don't have to lose sight of what or good have we done so far, and the fact that, you know, and try to stabilize, maybe scale back, or even hibernate part of our business, we will need also to get ready to recover possibly in 3-4 months at the best as we can. And I'm looking at 3 possible, let's say, profiles of companies according to what will be the new normal. I call that one of them go-getter, that are the one and actually are somehow thriving through this crisis because they're business that are mainly online or mixed online, offline, business in maintenance as well, or they're focusing their activity on delivery. There will be companies like Adapter that are kind of stick through the difficulty, but they will have really to seriously reconsider their skill and capabilities and some of their processes and some of the offer of their services or products. And unfortunately, there will be also a company that I call liquidators that will have to probably manage an orderly exit, and because they don't have enough cash, and given the new normal, the demand will slowly but steadily go down. So in terms of understanding what is the new normal, Steve asked me just to give you some glimpse of what is happening in Italy now. As probably from my accent, you have realized I'm Italian. I've been working many years in the UK in different phases of my professional life. But it's interesting because 2 countries with around the same population, around the same amount of working population, and they are really very much dependent also on SMEs. So the government now in Italy is acknowledging that we are in what we're getting slowly into the phase 2. That is when, you know, the contagious cases are diminishing steadily in the last couple of, let's say, 6-7 days, although too many people sadly die. And really the focus is on what to do to put as much as possible, many people as possible to work, to avoid a complete meltdown, because we're talking about in Europe of 8 to 10%, minus 10% in GDP. That is a huge amount. And so in order to do this, there are huge challenges. Just tell you one of them. If they want to put back to work 2 million people soon, they will have to deliver 8 million masks every day, simply because you need 4 masks per day per person. They will have to introduce also another really high logistic and supply chain issue that will be testing for antibodies, all people that do not show symptoms, just to make sure that they can work together. But also they are introducing, they're planning to introduce mobile phone applications to geolocalize people and understand who they've met and where they've been in the last 48 hours, and to allow them to go to public transport in Lombardy and Veneto. And for the rest, they have the same measure, like something similar to the employee protection one, the furlough that we have in the UK. It's called Cassa Integrazione. I think that also social distancing will continue for a long time until there is a vaccine and we don't go through the crisis. And perhaps another interesting thing is that there has been the the discussion about self-employed being a little bit at the margin. And just recently, there's been starting paying directly from the government institution directly to people, 600 euros that will go to 800 in May and June, to everyone who is essentially a sole, an independent worker, or is a partita IVA, we call it, but essentially whatever is the company, a company that is made of one single people, just to give even purchasing power, because there are really great concerns. Anyway, going back to the cash flow, just keep it simple for the moment. We'll go more in detail into tomorrow, but essentially the cash flow cycle, it works like this. You have a client, you sell to this client. As soon as you can, you want this client to pay you. The money ends up in your bank. Then you pay what you owe to your suppliers, possibly after that your customer pays you, and then the cycle repeats. What is happening now essentially is that the virus has broken this cycle, essentially because customers have been stopping paying us, buying us and paying us. And then we need to go back to basics. And really the first advice that I give is a very simple advice. Just manage your cash cycle from the point of view of a 12 weeks revolving forecast, 12 to 16 weeks, essentially because that is how long will last the crisis. And so we need to make sure that we keep it tight and we keep it checked. And revolving means that as week 1 finished, you add week 13, and when week 2 finished, you add week 14, so that you always keep this, let's say, feel moving on and the situation of what is happening week by week. And what you have to look at is essentially the top line that is sales minus your cost lines. That will give you an idea of quite precise idea, good idea of what the cash that you have in your pocket at that moment. If we take this example of a company that is declined 25% with 30% cost of goods sold and average of 70%, we're gonna have a look here. What we see is that at this rate of decline by week 6, essentially they will enter into a cash flow crisis. So it's important really that you look then at the different elements of cash flow one by one, looking at what is the stakeholders that are involved with this. Obviously, there are suppliers and clients, but also there are supplier of services like consultant, accountant, marketing agencies. Very important role is also other stakeholders like bank, and also the possibility of making the most as soon as possible of the loans, grants, tax deferrals, employment protection that the government is offering. But in terms of looking internally in our business is people. People is essentially a fixed cost, but we need to understand how we can repurpose our teams, how we can, who we can put on furlough and try to, make sure we can preserve their employment when the crisis is finished. Our stock, if there is any perishable stock, there are 2 C's in all this. I want you to write down. The 2 C's are communicate. Communication is extremely important with all stakeholders, and compromise. And compromise is also another thing that is absolutely important. Look at the asset that you can maybe sell, and then Andrew, I think, talk about business rates and what we can do. There are many ways you can keep track of your cash flow. You can even do it with a pen or a piece of paper. I think I can, if you need, I can share you different kind of Excel sheet according to the business that you have, or you can talk with your accountant. There is also a free tool that we have on our website. The link is here. We share the presentation. That is good enough for a number of companies. It also can link together with QuickBooks and Cllr if you need. There is a paid version, but I don't get any money for it. And actually, we have also a much more sophisticated tool that you can use with Business Doctor. It's called BD Pulse. And there is a special COVID-19 designed specifically to help people to go through the cash flow and working capital in the COVID-19 crisis. Talking about stakeholders, again, if we look at our clients, I think the first important thing to do is to identify the top one with whom you need absolutely to talk. When I say talk, is no text, no email, pick up the phone and call them and try to be transparent about what is going on with you, what are your challenges, what are theirs. Select the one that are most influential in your market and the one that are obviously the biggest share of wallet or of margin, and or maybe they own you money. You need to have a little bit of a creative solution mindset, because in this period it's not only about selling, is also you need to be more customer centric, the product centric, because it also could be that maybe in your team, in your organization, you have particular capabilities or skills that may be useful for them. For instance, at logistic level, supply chain, after sales, maintenance, or credit recovery. And in a period like this is a defining moment. You will be remembered if you help people after all this will finish. So don't hesitate to support also over and beyond what you're offering. Compromise is key. If it has cash flow, give longer payment terms, particularly if you can get a sort of repeated supply. Let's say you can say, okay, don't buy me 100 now, but if you can guarantee me that you buy for me 20 in 4 months, I perhaps do something for you. I reduce the minimum order quantities, but really make sure that everything that you give has a name, that a discount is against something else, so that you protect, let's say, your equity for when the business will go back normal, let's say in the new normal. So you don't just give anything for nothing. And really a can-do attitude. You can look at suppliers and from exactly in the same way, but from the other point of view. What would be critical is to identify the one that are maybe also potential bottlenecks in your company, because those one maybe you will want to pay before the others. You want also to make sure that you can obtain longer payment terms. You want to be open and say what are your challenges, as to compromise on minimum order quantities. And another interesting thing that you can do, if you have already stock with these suppliers that you cannot sell, you can say, hey, look, I need to buy this other component, I need to buy this other product from you, but I have this old stock that in the current situation I cannot sell at the same price. Can you give me a discount in order for me to allow me to sell the old stock at a lower price? It's another thing that they will probably have problems similar to you, and they would be willing to help. A common blind spot with small companies is that, particularly for what is concerning fixed cost and not direct cost, sometimes they are not very good in allocating part of this cost to the different products and services, and maybe carry on for a certain. If you do a hand chart, you may discover as an accountant or as a consultant that some of the services and some of the products they offer, they're not completely profitable. So this is something I will look into. I will look into your cost with the help of your accountant. And if you want, I can help as well, because I'm quite good into it. and see if we can understand on an activity based which products really are not making any profit or make you lose money. And maybe you can hibernate to scale down these activities. That is really important. Exceptional times, exceptional measure, you have to collaborate also with your competitors. So there are things that maybe you can go together, you can do together. You can consider sharing stock, because maybe somebody has what you need, but you don't have what they need. Logistic facilities, you can pull together to reduce procurement costs. There are many things I think that you can do if you talk also with your competitors or people working in the same vertical. So go to trade organization or join Zoom calls with trade organization, association, guilds, chamber of commerce, like the Wandsworth Chamber of Commerce, to keep communication open and see where are opportunities also with your competitors. Last but not least, banks, do not wait to ask for support, particularly for CBILS. That seems to prove a little bit complicated. They are inundated with requests. So don't wait also because you have anyway to have a bankable proposition. The possibility is that the more you wait, the more your cash flow situation may deteriorate. Be honest, be very open about and say what are you doing with your staff, your clients and your suppliers to face the crisis. And also ideally you want to also have a plan on how you plan to bounce back when the crisis is finished, and it's something that we do. We are a company to do this one. And on this one, I just want to let you know that next week, Business Doctors will do an agreement with a company called Swoop. And essentially, what we are helping here, we can help any company that is applying for CBIS to make sure that with a team of experts joined by Business Doctors and Swoop, to make sure that their application is COVID-19 compliance, let's say, so that you have all the elements on the plan to have a bankable proposition. They will always start with your original lender, but they have also the possibility to give you some choice and go beyond it if necessary. So I think this is something that we're offering to our clients, but also to our potential leads in order to help them to expedite the process for CBILS. So if you're interested, just get in touch with me and I will let you know more next week. Thank you very much, Steve. I hope that I'm not consumed too much time.
Thank you very much, Orestes. Can I ask you to unscreen share?
Yeah, sure.
Lovely. Zaib, you've been very helpful through all of our business forums. Is there anything you'd like to add on cash flow?
Yeah, I mean, Oreste has covered almost all the points. We deal with many businesses, and what we found that the revenue income has actually gone, in many cases, have gone to nil. Not even I know the practical example Oreste shared showed a decline by 25%, but many businesses have actually been very hard hit and their revenue has declined by 100%. So in that case, what we have actually told businesses, we've asked them to reconsider or readdress the issue with all of their outgoing suppliers. For example, they could be employees, they could be your landlords, they could be your suppliers for the services, everybody. So as Oreste mentioned, it's time to negotiate, communicate, and be honest. This is all about cash flow management. So be open, be sharing, and speak to everybody. It's time to readdress all of your relationships. Speak to them openly. We're all sailing the same boat over here. It's about time when we look into our fixed cost and convert them into variable cost. I'll give you a small tip. It's government is allowing businesses to furlough their employees, which means your proportion of the highest cost will be shared by the government in terms of giving you back 80% of the revenue. Now, in many cases, what will happen, and I'll give you our example, we provide bookkeeping services. Now, because we look after so many small businesses, they have gone back, and the directors and owners of the businesses are now looking into their finances, and they want to save the cost, so they're doing the bookkeeping themselves. So what happens with those 4 or 5 bookkeepers that we hire? So we have furloughed them, okay? But a few days ago, we received a request from an online wine retailer who wanted us to reconcile their 7 months of bookkeeping. So for that reason, I had to call somebody in to do 1 week or 2 weeks of work. But I was making a value for money decision, and I realized that if I get my regular bookkeeper, I unfurlough him, I will end up losing on this job. So what we did, we actually converted the fixed cost into variable cost. And what we did, we basically hired a self-employed bookkeeper and outsourced this job. So you have to basically look into every possible way. This is perhaps the best time of acting as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, and reassessing every cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaid. That's really helpful. So I think we had some real practical advice. I guess it's not rocket science if you've been in business, and much of it is obvious. But I guess the point I take from it is that your approach really needs to be systemized and your actions recorded, so you know what you have done, what you haven't done, what you can do in the future. I think it was interesting to hear about Italy, because they are a few weeks ahead of us, and they're starting to approach recovery. And then this kind of poses a whole new set of questions for businesses. It's not just about opening up again if you're able, but it's about planning and risk assessing a whole new set of issues. I'm now going to open it up to the question and answer session. So could I ask all the speakers to unmute themselves? We had some questions posted on the chat, but it's extremely difficult to just flick through them and read them out. If anyone has asked a question on chat, could you just put your hand up?
I have a question. I run a nursery. Well, it's a play centre in Wandsworth, and I was told by the business rates department that nurseries are not eligible to the business rates holiday or the grant. Now, my business is it's a franchise and very similar to quite a few, maybe about 50 others in the country. And all of them, apart from myself, have been treated similar to what the government said, which is that nurseries and play centres are eligible to the rate holiday and the grant. I don't understand why Wandsworth has taken a different step. I've been told many times that I'm not eligible, and I have been sent my rates bill for this year already, which I cancelled because I can't pay it because the centre is closed and I'm in receipt of no income whatsoever. So I just wondered whether there was anyone there that could help me and clarify what the situation is for day nurseries or children's play centres, please. Thank you.
Firstly, Wandsworth has no discretion about the rules. These are government schemes and we work to the government rules, so they should be applied the same nationally. And my understanding of the nursery scheme is that if the nursery is an Ofsted registered nursery, then it will be subject to a business rates holiday, and a revised bill will be issued in due course. But nurseries do not form part of the retail, hospitality and leisure grants. They're not eligible.
Okay. The problem I have is that I am not actually a nursery. I've been classified or categorized as a day nursery, but I provide, it's a children's gym. It's a children's play center. I'm not Ofsted registered because I don't provide a daycare facility because you need to provide that to be Ofsted registered. So I'm not Ofsted registered, so I don't come under that category. I either come under the category of being a play center, leisure facility, similar to somewhere like Eddie Katz. So that's what I am. So I don't understand I don't know what to do, basically.
Okay, well, the best thing to do, I would say, would be to email me details of your business.
Thank
So
you.
anything about the way your business works, what it does, and I'll have a look at it for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleo. Walter, I understand you have a question.
I do. Can you hear me?
Lovely, yes.
Very good. Very good. Good morning, everyone. I see a few faces that I recognize. I hope you're all well. It's nice to see you all and keeping safe. So I run the Gazette restaurants in the borough, 100% Wandsworth borough. And just a very simple question, which I've already asked on several occasions regarding businesses with an RV over 51K. Which is my case. Just wondering, is there anything planned? Has anyone got an update on what we could benefit from in terms of grants? In a couple of other questions, but I'll just crack on with that one first.
Right, the grant scheme that the government set out only applies to businesses with rateable values below 51,000.
Yep. Is there anything planned for other businesses? Because at the moment, for businesses with an RV over 51, there's just absolutely no help at all, except the business rate relief and the furlough of staff, which is something we're just passing on. Is there anything on the table, or?
Well, there's nothing specifically from Wandsworth Council because these are government schemes. Yep. So I can only suggest that you speak to your MP and ask them if they can lobby on your behalf.
Okay, we'll do that. Can I ask another question relating to HR, or should I pass?
Oh, no, of course, please do.
The other question I have is also pending, is that in the restaurant business, the people's salary is made of proper wage and the addition of service charge, a company called Cllr. So for some people, depending on some factors, it can go up to like 30–35% of their income. So obviously furloughing at the moment is only for 80% of their wage. And the service charge, the Cllr payment, is not included in that. It's very, very vague. We've got some very large companies in London, restaurant companies, that are under still think that we can ask for it, and we'll wait for the 20th of this month to have further details on that. But has anyone got any expertise, knowledge, information on whether we can furlough or they can get 80% of their revenue on that?
Zaib, can you help with this one?
Yes, so we look after many restaurants in the borough. What we understand is commissions and bonuses are not included in this. And we have seen the guideline as well. Having said that, I am not the payroll expert. If you send one-line email to payroll@lanop.co.uk, I'll tell my payroll manager to advise you or send you some detailed frequently asked questions around furlough scheme. But as we understand, there are many businesses where there is a small basic salary, and then for example, many sales, marketing and digital companies where they would offer huge commissions to their employees. The furlough scheme is very much specific to 80% of your basic salary. And I think the same rule will apply to the restaurants as well.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Walter. Mark, you're...
Hello there. Yes, because you've got both Graham and Jonathan there, and please don't think I'm ungrateful, because I am in receipt of the grant, and I think that's marvellous that I've received it so quickly. So congratulations to Wandsworth for that. But I just want clarification on, having done that amazing task of getting the grant to me, I'm just so surprised that you're taking the direct debit for the business rates. I mean, one involves, you know, sending out the money, getting the information, and the other one surely means don't press a button to not take the direct debit. And so, having taken the direct debit, are you going to give it back?
Graham, can you help?
I can. Firstly, I should apologise if we have taken a direct debit incorrectly. The team assured me that they had stopped all of those direct debits being taken. So if you want to email me, I'll chase the payment for you. And if you've paid incorrectly, then you will clearly get a refund.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Julie, you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was applying for the 10,000 grant, and when Wandsworth acknowledged, you know, my claim, it came back and said, as soon as we get the money from the government, we'll pass it on to you, which I thought was slightly odd to say, particularly given you've just now said it paid out 26 million. So you obviously have been getting some money.
Yeah, we have. When we set the websites up, we hadn't. I mean, the government were very late in finalising the funding for the scheme and the rules.
What a surprise. Okay. All right.
So,
well, I'll wait to hear.
Yeah, we're in the position. Yeah, if you remember the figures I quoted earlier.
Yeah, you're halfway through.
3,100, about 1,700 have been processed. So we're working through those as quickly as we can.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
I've got a question, if that's all right.
Oh, is that Steve?
Steve Novak, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had some private messages with Graham regarding a couple of my, my main issue, which is not getting a grant as yet. I have two sites that seem completely within the legislation to get grants, but I have a third head office site that clearly it's a whole process is to run a hospitality business. Will that get the relief that I've applied for, do you think, or does it physically have to be a hospitality? Well, you know, does it have to have customers coming in?
It physically has to be a hospitality business and has to be open to the public and customers. Right. Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'll only get two. Okay, which you obviously, Graham, you know I haven't had and would like, but I'll leave you to pursue that if you could. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this is a question for Graham. I operate Malcolm Ryan Studios, which is on the Wimbledon Stadium Business Centre. We've got about 30,000 square foot, and as a result, now we're paying, I think, £500 a day in business rates to be in Wandsworth with a business that's actually turning over zero and will be for the foreseeable. I know this question has probably already been asked, but can you tell me what would be my best route now to try and not pay it, B, try and get some sort of holiday? Who should I actually be approaching? Did you say it was a local MP?
Well, I mean,
I have actually. I phoned the business rates line. I've emailed them. I got through to someone who then said, "I'll give you a call back." They're useless over there. So no offence to anyone who works in that department, but I didn't get a call back. And I didn't get an email back, and I emailed a month ago. So, like I said, we're paying a fortune to be in Wandsworth, but with no business and no trading going on, it's 12 grand a month for nothing. And it's quite desperate. I need to contact someone at Wandsworth or at the government to try for our case to be looked at.
Okay. Again, if you can just email me your details and I'll chase that up with the team.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
And you don't think we need to contact an MP? That was mentioned earlier. That was something.
Well, I mean, the best the council will be able to do for you at the moment will be to come to some kind of arrangement about the payment of the rates. There's no holiday that the council can grant.
So you said it's government policy that affects that, nothing to do with Wandsworth.
Yeah, all of the grant schemes and the reliefs are government policy that we're just implementing on their behalf.
Okay, I will email you. Thank you.
Yeah, Luke, I think that the point was made that, you know, do involve your MP because they can lobby government directly. This is a huge issue for businesses with larger rate bills, and it's completely untenable. I totally sympathise with you, but we need to get the government to take action on this.
Who is our MP, please?
Where are you based?
SW17, Wimbledon Stadium Business Centre.
SW17.
I can't, isn't it?
It's Rosanna, that's Tooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rosanna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. So I have Helena, who's asked if she could ask a question.
Yes, hello, hi. Well, I run a wellness center, and we offer yoga, Pilates, and holistic treatments, or body treatments. So as you can imagine, due to sort of like social distancing that started before the lockdown, we were affected throughout March or even the end of February. I did pay my rent for March, and I'm due to pay the rent for April to June. I'm actually in receipt of the grant, and I'm very, very grateful to the council. You know, it was really dealt with very promptly in my case. However, I've got a lot of self-employed staff, and I have a number of employed staff as well who I above placed on furlough. But I'm trying to assist my self-employed staff as well, because they are obviously not going to be in receipt of anything till June. So I'm kind of desperately holding on to this money and trying to stretch it as far as I can, because I haven't paid the rent yet, because I just don't know what's going to happen and whether there will be kind of ongoing assessment of the situation, because of the type of the services we offer. You know, we are likely to be the last to reopen, and probably affected for a long time. I mean, there were headlines on Sunday saying social distancing to continue indefinitely or for a year. So as you can imagine, people will not want to have body treatments or be crammed in a small room. So yes, I do have this money now, but if I pay it over to landlord now, and basically what I received is enough for them is just enough for 2 quarters of rent. I have no other money whatsoever, and God knows when I'm going to be in receipt of any money. So I mean, I just want to know whether you know, the situation will be assessed again, and whether, you know, there will be some plans for, you know, whether you are monitoring what's going on, and whether there will be some further help, or whether you know, we'll just have to make do with what we received.
So I have James McCallum.
Thanks, Steve. I did actually try to ask this question last week before we got interrupted, prematurely, as it were. It was about going back to those grants again. So grant for recipients of small business rates relief. Are these grants taxable in the hands of the recipient? So I've got a company. It's the company that's received the grant. Will that grant of 10 grand be subject to corporation tax? And apologies if this question was in fact answered last week, and I missed it because of the interruption.
Zaib,
maybe I'm asking that question possibly of Graham Russell, or maybe an accountant on the meeting.
Sorry, there was a distortion. I didn't hear the question correctly.
Okay, is the 10 grand grant for recipients of small business rates relief, okay, is it taxable? Is it subject to corporation tax?
Yes, so what we have seen so far, these grants are taxable incomes.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Lovely. Roddy Guy, you've asked if you can ask a question.
Yes, please. Furloughing. I'm wondering if anyone can give on clarification on what furloughed staff can do or can't do. For example, they can work as volunteers in public service, but I've also read somewhere that they can actually volunteer to work with their employer as long as it's not a revenue earning job. So for example, my bookkeeper, who doesn't earn us any revenue, can I ask her to come in even though she's on furlough? She's very willing to do this.
As far as we understand, apart from training, they cannot be working for the employers who have furloughed them. Government is encouraging training of staff, so people have something to do while they're home. There has been a relaxation in terms of what businesses, like, this is the only stream of income left for the directors, for the owners managed businesses running from small company structures. So the directors can be furloughed as well. They will be able to claim 80% as well of their declared salaries. But again, they can only be seen as to be doing performing the duties which they need to, like for example, statutory filings, responding to accountants' emails, furloughing their staff, but they can't be any value adding activity. Yes, in terms of your employees, if they are furloughed, no, they cannot do any other work for you apart from the training. Yes, they can go and work for another employer. They can volunteer elsewhere. I think this is a precaution, or this is sort of, this has been kept in place to ensure that this scheme is not exploited.
Thank you very much. Marjan, you have a question?
My question is about self-employed. Maybe Zaeb can answer it, or anybody else. I am self-employed myself, and also I do have some staff that are on self-employed, as they are self-employed workers. And what has my understanding was that at the end of June, we're going to be sent a lump sum for 12 weeks based on the last 3 years of a tax return. I just want to know, to get some updates on that. And our government has said that if meanwhile self-employed people, they want to have money, they can apply for universal credit. But at the same time, apparently there are some limitations in regards to how much money you have currently. And if you do have more than 16 grand worth of savings, money in your business, whatever, you won't be eligible for applying for any help till that end of June that the government help comes. So I just want to see whether there are any clarifications on this, or my understanding is correct or incorrect, or what's the correct understanding on this. Thank you.
Zaeb, did you want to take that?
Yes, there is a part of question that I'm not an expert on. So universal tax credits is not my area of expertise, but I do understand the principle behind it. So for example, if you have a saving income of £16,000, there is a threshold, then it means you can support yourself till the government gives you the money in June. So it is, I think it is more of a cushion left over there, that if you have the money in savings, if that is the reason you can't apply for the universal tax credits, then like basically, as we understand, HMRC will be contacting all self-employed people, sole traders themselves, and they said they will be doing it in June, and they will be giving you 3 months of grant, capped at again £2,500 per month, or 80% of your taxable profits. So this is the grant, and it will be coming in June, and it will cover the 3 months. Yes.
So my question is that, for example, I do have some money in the business account, but what I don't understand, I got some stuff that have been furloughed. So I have to pay them for 3 months, and the government money we've been told is going to come end of April, but nothing has happened so far. So I do have some money that I have to pay as staff, hoping government is going to pay me back. So, and I have to leave as well. So I don't understand this concept of 16 grand, but how fair it is to a self-employed person. It's as if we've been punished twice
No,
for being self-employed.
You're right. That's why the cash flow management comes in. Again, you will have to speak. If you don't have the money to pay your staff, first of all, you should. If you can't, you need to sit down with them. Look, there are other protections out there as well. They can't be evicted from their houses. They need to speak to their landlords as well. It's a chain. We all need to work together. So you speak to your staff whom you can pay, what you can pay. We have been advising our clients like, okay, you can't pay 80%, pay them 50%, pay them 40%, whatever you can, so they can bring their groceries, etc. in, and then let them know about their rights as well, so they can go back and speak to their creditors and tell them, look, we are in a very genuine position. My employer has got a cash flow problem. They're going to be paying me when they get the money, and I will support this with my bank statement. So we all need to work together in this, and hopefully, as you can see, what I'm telling you already, you can see that by going through this layer, you can address a lot of the cash flow problem or cash flow issue.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a last question for our panel before I close the session?
Hi, can I just quickly ask one question about furlough as well?
Please do.
Yeah, actually, I was really unlucky because I recently hired someone and he began on the 12th of March. So according to the scheme, am I right to say that he is not eligible for furlough, or is there something that has been considered about people who got who were let's say employed after the 28th of February? And I can imagine that there are quite a few out there.
Yes. Can you tell me, in reference to this particular employee, was he employed in February by another employer?
No, I think he was not employed at that point, but to be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so what we've been advising, again, there is no, I haven't read, I've been reading different forums. What has been advised is to the employee to go back to the old employer, okay, and ask them to re-employ him and furlough him straight away. And that will not cost them anything. And again, because this is the only way that he can get government support. If nothing else, then he will have to go through the universal tax credits.
So yeah, but if they hire him back, that means that he's hired also by me.
Because I understand that basically you can't furlough him. You don't have work for him. You've recently employed him. If you can pay him, if your business, if you're genuinely concerned about the competition and you want to retain him, then you have no other choice but to pay him out of your own pocket. Okay. But if you can't afford to, then you have to let him go and look through the other channels of supporting himself. And the best advisable route right now is that he should go to his old employer and ask him to re-employ and straight away furlough him. And they would have an understanding. They will both know that the only reason he's coming back is to be furloughed and get access to government fund.
Okay. It's all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you to everyone who attended, to our speakers for coming and being on the panel. These are extraordinary times, but we are here for you. We will keep these meetings on a weekly basis, just so that you've got the opportunity to ask the questions that you have. If there's anyone that you would like in particular to have on the panel, just drop me an email at steve@wandsworthchamber.org. I noticed we had our MP for Putney, Fleur Anderson, on, and in the chat box, she's left her email address for you to email her. And yeah, we'll see you next week. We've got some other events on this week on Zoom. We've got the business doctor events that will take you through the whole cash flow and recovery program over the next 3 days. We've got a happy hour for Wandsworth Chamber members and guests at 5 p.m. on Friday. And Wandsworth Oasis have put on a comedy night at 7 p.m. So there's a lot happening to network with for businesses to keep their heads above water and just try and work together, really. Lastly, I can't tell you how pleased I am and relieved that we didn't get Zoom bombed this week. The security measures that we put in place do seem to have held up. And so with that, I'll say goodbye and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care and stay safe. Thank you very much. Goodbye.